question about 3D printing being adopted is, are you going to get your 3D printer from Walmart, or is your neighbor going to make it for you? You know, are we going to have metal and plastic on tap the way we have water and electricity? You know, like, it's that kind of stuff that gets me really excited. You think about the implications. Yeah, government can't regulate that. How can you have gun control when you can 3D print guns? And this is like the great work of Cody Wilson and Defense Distributed right now. Are we getting kicked out of the room?
We have to be done by 10.
By 10?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The $100 room, yeah.
Oh. So we only have just a few minutes here. Then, does that kind of address your point? That it's about being cognizant of this and applying it. So, all right, we really got to hurry here. I want to read localization because to answer the bigger part of your question, what do we do? Fighting inch by inch is not going to do it. You know, if you go, well, and I support all activism that reduces coercion in society and that helps wake people up. But if you're going to go and argue with the bureaucrat all day about one law being applied one way that you don't like, you know, you're fighting inch by inch, and the politicians are going to pat you on the head and say, oh, good little citizen, you used the democratic process, and they're going to take a mile behind your back and laugh at you while they're doing it. So maybe we have time for 1 or 2 chapters. And if you have a quick question.
I was interested in chapter 9. Your spiritual inner self-awakening that you had in prison is very interesting to me, because we're all in this place of, you know, we're pissed off about stuff that's going on, we're trying to change it. It's constantly a battle in our minds and in our spirits, and I'm really fascinated with how you found yourself and how you keep that inner peace and how you're happy no matter what is going on outside of you. And I think a lot of us struggle with that. So I wanted you to talk about that balance that you found and how you found it.
Can I read that chapter then first? All right. So that's kind of 2 chapters. The first one in chapter 9 is, I believe, emotional slavery, and that's kind of setting the next. The next 2 are a little more obvious to someone who, you know, is familiar with libertarianism in the sense that, you know, work freedom and health freedom, you know, kind of connected that in a lifestyle sense. But what really hits home here is the last subchapter in chapter 9, which is happiness causes freedom. And this is the one that I wrote while I was in jail and had to adapt stylistically to fit into the book. And one of the things about this book that's really important is that it's easily accessible, it's universally applicable, and it's not Amerocentric. So it really speaks to the universality of the human experience and the modern phenomena of government rather than just the American government. But this is really important, so I'm excited. We'll do this, and then I guess we'll do localization, and if we have time for one more, then maybe we'll take a request, all right? So, happiness causes freedom. If you don't know how to be happy, what's the point of being free? What good is it to live in a free society, in a free country, or even a free world if you are such an emotional cripple that you're incapable of enjoying it? Why would you struggle to escape the oppression of police and parliaments and presidents, to remain a slave to fear and insecurity? These aren't just philosophical questions to ponder, but questions of practical relevance to anyone who cares about freedom, who I would presume cares about freedom because it is essential to human happiness. Many people would assume that freedom should lead to happiness, but that does not correctly describe the relationship. The way that most people understand freedom and happiness is backwards, perverted by primitive thinking. Happiness is not the result of freedom. Happiness causes freedom. Do you need freedom to be happy? Most certainly not. Happiness is not pursued, captured, beaten over the head with a club and hauled home to be enjoyed forever and ever. It is often pointed out that money can't buy happiness. Some studies have actually shown that money can buy happiness only to the point at which money can no longer buy independence. But that independence is based on an illusion of external conditions. The most successful people by any measure are as prone to misery and depression as anyone else. If anything, By looking at the modern world and antidepressant consumption, we might conclude that wealth causes depression. Even a brief examination of the human condition reveals that happiness is not a pursuit as much as a choice. True mental freedom is empowerment to choose your state of mind. If the only happiness you ever know is dependent on external factors, you will remain a slave to circumstance and never be truly happy. You can only swing between happiness and fear, knowing deep down that if conditions beyond your control change, you won't be happy. What a sad state of emotional servitude. What a terrible position of vulnerability. A crude animal in such a primitive state is dangerously prone to manipulation against its own interests. While you will never control the challenges that life presents you with, and you may never master your animalistic reactions, your mood and your frame of mind are your choice. This is the unique gift of human consciousness. This is the truest beauty of human nature. This is the foundation of our capacity for love and connectedness, and thus freedom. Being happy is as simple as changing your mind. Of course, this speaks to a range of mental states we can choose. With true mental freedom, we can choose to be determined, thoughtful, compassionate, patient, loving. But beneath all that, why would you ever choose to be less than perfectly happy? While it really is that simple, and it really is that easy, it is a discipline of happiness. As we are animals, emotions serve an essential role for survival. Fear and the fight or flight response has saved countless lives. But having experienced the evolutionary brain explosion, such hardwired responses often take over our evolved brains and prevent us from fully using them. Rational fears become anxiety and insecurity. Disappointment becomes depression. Hostility becomes anger and hatred. The discipline of happiness is separating these reactions from how we should deliberately choose to live our lives. It is the practice of living well. This unique empowerment liberates us as individuals and as a species from all past misdeeds of our primitive nature. Living well is not just the best revenge, it is the only revenge worth having. But if you choose to dwell in fear, disappointment, and hostility, and choose to be unhappy, then you'll be unhappy. We are programmed to fear death, but wouldn't you rather face it rationally, calmly, happily? Fear not only makes us vulnerable to manipulation by those who would oppress us, but it also tempts us to be oppressors. The tyranny of democracy under most governments encourages the greatest participation in fear-based oppression. Every politician's pitch is based on some version of, if you give me power over you, I can make you happy and take away your fear. In the act of voting, we are not choosing leaders for ourselves, we are trying to impose our choice of leaders and fears on others. We should instead seek to be the alphas of our own lives. Someone who is truly emotionally free has no need for imposed external authority. The people who are the driving force behind statism are not happy people, and truly happy people are not very political. The freedom movement is not a political movement. It is an anti-political movement. A truly happy person can appeal to the better nature of fellow human beings, can meet them with peace and persuasion, and displace the coercion of the state with voluntary relationships and self-rule based on self-ownership. A person who knows their own capacity as a free, beautiful, independent human being will never say, "But what will people think of me?" A person who can be happy in any situation will never say, "But what if I lose my job?" A person who knows self-discipline will never say, "But what if the sacrifice is too great?" The compassion of a truly happy person will say, "How could I possibly not share my joy and let some poor victimizer continue in the misery of oppressing others?" Only a mental slave will hate their oppressors. A free mind will pity them and seek to share joy with those who are deficient of love. We should not fight oppression or struggle for liberation, but rather seek to empower those who have succumbed to mental slavery. The greatest weapon against tyranny is a mind that refuses to submit to manipulation. If you want to be a warrior for truth, a soldier for justice, and a champion of freedom, you must first attain the discipline of happiness in a greater